Right, Ms. Barr, would you like to take this witness on voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank
All
you.
right, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Rosa.
Hey, good afternoon.
You testified before lunch that you use the Strava app.
Correct.
Application. Are you employed by Strava?
No.
Have you ever been employed by Strava?
No, ma'am.
Have you ever had any kind of professional association with Strava?
No.
What kind of server systems are the Strava records maintained on?
I do not know.
Do you know where they keep their physical servers?
No, ma'am.
Do you know if they use a cell tower system or a satellite tracking system to keep their records?
It's my understanding that it's GPS based via satellite.
And how do you know that?
Just when you sign up for it and it gives information about what Strava is, it talks about it and gives an overview.
So you learned that as a user
Right.
when you got the emails?
Well,
to sign
just
up.
signing up, yes.
How does the Strava app generate route reports?
So basically when you hit that record button or your start button, your transmitter or your receiver, I guess your Garmin device or your phone would be that receiver, and it's going to get the GPS data hit to it. So once you're finished, it would compile those points along the way to generate the map. That's my understanding of how a mapping system would work.
And you've learned that as a user of the app?
Right, just by knowing the routes that I've taken and seeing the map and it correlating.
What sources of information are used to generate the route reports?
Can you be more specific, or?
I would like to know if you know how the route reports are generated.
I don't know.
I'm going to object as vague as phrase.
Overall, you can answer. Do you understand the question?
Yes, but just from basic GPS data that gets stored into one of the application text files. I've seen that on my phone whenever I've had backups done, but I don't know how they actually store it in their format. I couldn't tell you.
Do you know how Strava maintains the reports?
No.
Do you know how the route reports are verified by Strava?
I don't know.
Meaning that if, for example, if a user, say you, were to call Strava and say, my app is showing that I ran or swam or cycled 5 miles, but I know that I ran or swam or cycled 20 miles that day.
Mm-hmm.
How does Strava verify which of those things is true?
Through GPS, because I had activities where the GPS data was off a little, or the GPS actually lost signal, and when that occurred on the map, it would just show a straight line from where it lost signal to where it gained it again.
Do you know how the Strava app authenticates a user's profile information?
I don't know their authentication process.
For example, how Strava can confirm if the name on the profile matches a real person. Do you know how they authenticate that?
It would be user input. So, I mean, I could put whatever name I wanted to on mine. Most people put their true names, but there are others that don't and use pseudonyms or use a different photo and not necessarily a photo of themselves on their profile.
You're assuming that from your experience as a user.
Right, it's strictly as a user.
But you haven't looked at the entire Strava user universe of people who are using the app and compared that to real people.
No, I haven't.
Your Honor, at this point, I don't think that that she can authenticate these records. She only has
All right. Okay.
information.
Well, okay. The objection is noted. Just let me ask you. You said that you can tell when it malfunctions. In other words, it loses signal because it has one point where it ends, another point where it picks up, and it's just a straight line.
Yes.
And doesn't, for example, doesn't follow the natural curvature of a road you might be riding.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Other than that, is it have you gone on rides or runs and then looked at your Strava and said, yes, that's exactly where I went?
Yes.
So you verified the accuracy of
At
it?
least 99% of the time I've used it over 6.5, 7 years.
Okay, and that's by looking at the map that it generates?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Let's see, council, sidebar on the record, please. And again, when we go Presence of the jury. All right, Mr. Owens, you can continue your direct examination.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Ms. Rosa, we discussed earlier in your direct examination that you had located a number of emails and internet artifacts that reflected a user profile in the name of Kellen Winslow Jr. for the Strava application. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And those were sent to the K2 Gmail email addresses that were contained on the laptop seized in Mr. Winslow's residence. Is that correct?
The emails were from the iMac. The laptops aren't in play for this.
Yes, the iMac laptop, right?
It's a all-in-one, so it's more of a tower type
I'm
computer.
sorry, I'm referring to it as an laptop. I
Yep.
apologize. The computer.
Yes.
And in terms of that computer, was that identified as K2 when you were discussing the computer name?
Right, K2's iMac.
Now, showing you what's been marked as Quartz Exhibit 99 for identification, looking at this exhibit, does that appear to be a user ride record of from the Strava application?
Yes, sir, it does.
If I may approach, Your Honor.
Yes, this is 99, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm going to show you a series of images, and I have them here. What would be the date and time associated with this particular ride from the Strava application?
The date is Thursday, May 24th, 2018 at 3:26 p.m.
And is there a notation for the user associated with this account?
It says Kellen Winslow Jr.
And is there a label for this particular ride on May 24th that originated at 3:26 p.m.?
It's titled Afternoon Ride, which is basically the default setting if you ride after a certain point of day.
And is there a user photograph associated with the account?
Yes, sir.
And does that depict an individual wearing cycling clothing?
Yes, it does.
And was there actually a GPS route that's reflected on Quartz Exhibit 99?
Yes.
And did that route originate in the city of Encinitas and then drive, and then lead northeastern direction up into the hills of Santa Lija?
Yes. The green dot would be the origination, and then the checkered flag is where it ends.
And then moving forward from Quartz Exhibit 99, looking at Quartz Exhibit 86 for identification, does this show a origin of the route depicted in a close-up view of the GPS coordinates?
It is a close-up of the route. If it was taken from that one, then my answer would be yes.
Okay. And does that actually show the Cardiff Sports Park that would be located along Lake Drive?
Correct.
And would this include the intersection between Lake Drive and Birmingham Drive?
Yes, sir.
And looking at that GPS data, is that consistent with your experience and your use of the Strava app in terms of the origin and the way in which it would be tracked for various locations?
Yes, sir.
Now turning to Quartz Exhibit 87 for identification, is there another afternoon ride associated with the same Strava user account with the name Kellen Winslow Jr. and the photograph we just discussed?
Yes, sir.
And does that show that there was an afternoon ride on the day prior to May 24th?
Correct, it does.
What was the date that's associated with this printout?
It's Wednesday, May 23rd, 2018 at 4:15 p.m.
And does that show that there is a origin on the GPS coordinates that's contained here?
Yes.
And was that also in the city of Encinitas?
Yes.
And then was there a ride down the coast highway into Solana Beach and down towards Del Mar?
Yes, correct.
Showing you now Quartz Exhibit 88. Does that show a close-up view of Lake Drive as it extends down to Birmingham Drive for this ride?
Yes, sir, it does.
And does it show the GPS track actually stops or continues and makes a loop into what would be the residence area of the homes that are near that corner of Lake Drive and Birmingham Drive?
Yes, sir.
Showing you now Quartz Exhibit 89 for identification. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes.
does that show the same user profile by the name of Kellen Winslow Jr. and the photo that we've identified?
Yes, sir.
And does that show an afternoon ride labeled for a particular date?
Yes, it does.
What's the date associated with this afternoon ride?
This one is Thursday, May 10th, 2018 at 2:45 p.m.
Now, with this particular printout, does that show also that there are GPS coordinates that are associated with the ride on May 10th of 2018?
Yes.
And did that also originate in the Lake Drive area of Encinitas? Or the city of Encinitas?
Yes.
And did it extend down on El Camino Real to Manchester Road?
Correct, yes.
Showing you Quartz Exhibit 90 for identification, does this show that on May 10th, the route taken by, that was automatically recorded by the GPS data, does that show that it extends southbound on Manchester Road near the 5 freeway?
Yes, sir, it does.
And does it show that the route taken went along Manchester Road and near the San Elijo Lagoon in a loop to the west of the 5 freeway?
Yes, sir, it does.
And it then continues on and extends through the Cardiff area of Encinitas and southbound on Coast Highway, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Just one moment, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you, nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, Cross?
Just a couple questions. A Strava app user doesn't log into the app using a fingerprint, do they?
No, it's an email address and password.
There's no iris scan or anything like that.
Correct, no.
So it's possible that a person could use a registered user's Apple Watch or their Garmin, record a ride or a run, and that would be uploaded to the registered user's profile.
Sure, if that was the account that was logged in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any redirect?
No, thank you.
All right, can this witness be excused?
She may.
Yes.
All right,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll take those exhibits.
Thank
All right,
you, sir.
Mr. Owen, next witness.
Your Honor, may we briefly approach, I want to make a disclosure to the court on, I would assume on the record.
Okay, we'll approach on a record. All right, let's go back on the record. We're now meeting in the presence of the jury. All right, you can call your next witness.
Thank you. The people call Haley McKinney.
If you would come forward and raise your right hand. You do solemnly state that the testimony you are about to give in the matter now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you would, please have a seat at the witness stand. And if you would, please state your name and spell your first and last name for the record.
Haley McKinney, Hailey, McKinney.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, Ms. McKinney. All right, direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. McKinney.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell the jury what you do for a living?
I am a crime and intelligence analyst with the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, currently assigned to the Major Crimes Division.
Can you tell us what your duties are as a crime and intelligence analyst with the Major Crimes Division?
In this particular assignment, we are responsible for case support to the case agents and the detectives in our units, meaning that we will help identify a suspect in cases where a suspect's not known, if we have clues that may help lead them to one. And we also help to identify evidence or pieces of information that may support or corroborate statements in cases.
Now, when you are actually in case support, are you working with the investigators, the detectives that are assigned to the Major Crimes Division?
Yes, always.
And can you just tell us a little bit about your training and experience that qualifies you to be an analyst with the Sheriff's Department?
I've been with the department for 10 years. I started out as a dispatcher before transferring over to the crime analysis unit. I have a bachelor's degree from San Diego State University in criminal justice, and I've taken numerous classes on the various topics and skills we have.
And in terms of some of the types of information that you're able to generate as an analyst, what do you typically do on a day-to-day basis when you're working in case support?
The duties themselves can vary. Whatever might come up in a case, we tend to wear several hats. Most consistently, I monitor social media sites and open source intelligence, anything that we can garner that's been put out on the internet. I look at several forms of electronics. I look at laptops, tablets, cell phones, digital cameras, USB devices, hard drives, anything that might be taken in an investigation. We also look at data that may have been pulled, anything that might be GPS based, whether that be like cell phone tower data or cell phone records or anything of that sort. So it really can vary. We do a lot of pattern analysis and those sorts of things as well.
Now, in terms of your assistance with the investigation into the reported sexual assaults in March of 2018 and May of 2018, did you work with Detective John Johnson seated in court here?
Yes, I did.
And did you, in terms of some of the case support that you engaged in, did you assist him with locating, like you said, open source information regarding a suspect in the case?
Yes.
Now, we've shown a series of exhibits. I'd like to just take a moment, if I can, showing you Quartz Exhibit 99 for identification. If you recognize that as being the Strava user report for a ride that occurred on May 24th of 2018.
I have an exhibit. You can take a look. I have a hard copy here.
Thank
If you
you.
want to take a look. There's other exhibits underneath it as well. That is 99.
Okay. Yes, that is the ride on May 24th, 2018.
And looking at Quartz Exhibit 86, the next exhibit, does that show an origin of that ride that would be on Lake Drive near its intersection with Birmingham Drive?
Yes.
And based upon your knowledge of the case and the information that you had in coordination with Detective Johnson, would that be close to the residence associated with the person we're referring to as Jane Doe 3?
Yes.
And then moving forward to Quartz Exhibit 87 for identification. And does that show the information reflecting a May 23rd, the day prior to the reported indecent exposure incident for that same profile?
Yes, it does.
And looking at Quartz Exhibit 88, previously identified, does that show GPS location information that extends into the front yard area of Jane Doe 3?
Yes, it does.
Showing in Quartz Exhibit 89, does that show the user information for a ride dated May 10th, 2018?
Yes, it does.
And moving forward to Quartz Exhibit 90, previously identified, does that show the GPS data for that ride that extends southbound on Manchester Avenue along the Santa Oliva Lagoon area?
Yes.
And is that where the reported sexual assault of Jane Doe 2 was reported to have occurred?
Yes.
Now, in terms of some of the further case support that you did you also conduct a cell phone download of the phone that was identified as, by Detective Johnson as being taken from the person of Kellen Winslow during his arrest on June 14th of 2018?
Yes, I did.
Can you just tell the jury, in terms of cell phone download technology, how it is that you've received training in that area and what you do when you, in fact, conduct a download?
In terms of training, I had on-the-job training up to through our subject matter expert in our unit. And then in 2017, I took 2 courses through outside agencies, including our RCFL laboratory and a company called GeoCell, amounting to 24 hours of training.
What type of software program and hardware do you actually use in order to conduct a cell phone download?
It's a program called Cellbrite, and we typically use just for this particular phone model, we use just the standard issue iPhone cord.
And when you say it's an iPhone cord, is that the kind that you can plug in with a USB port to either charge or even plug in directly to a computer?
Correct.
And you mentioned the term Cellbrite. Is that the software program that's used by law enforcement to forensically download a cellular device?
Yes, it is.
Can you just describe the training that you received when you went to the outside agencies, separate from the on-the-job training you've done?
Those particular trainings both covered how to forensically download the actual device and then how to interpret the results that we received from the phones.
And did you in fact conduct a download of the device that Detective Johnson provided to you with the description of it being Mr. Winslow's?
Yes.
And do you recall when you conducted that extraction of the device?
The actual extraction itself, if I may just double check on the
Would
report
it refresh
here.
your recollection and refer to
Yes.
your notes?
The actual extraction occurred on June 20th, 2018, approximately 1600 hours, 4 p.m.
And can you explain to the jury, when you're doing a Cellbrite download of a phone, what type of information is generated when you do this type of extraction?
It varies from model to model and depending on what kind of software is actually on the phone. But we'll typically get all of the text messages, any browsing data from their internet app. We'll also sometimes we'll get chat messages, meaning their Facebook Messenger, the iMessage application. Again, it just depends on the model of phone we're looking at, but a great majority of what's on the cell phone.
And in terms of the volume of information that you would receive from an extraction report, is it fair to say that it's often in the at least hundreds, if not thousands of pages in terms of the data that would be contained on one extraction report?
Yes.
And was that the case when you completed this extraction?
Yes, it was.
Now, I want to talk to you about some of the specific items that were contained on the phone, but when you conducted this extraction on June 20th, did you obtain an extraction report that reflected the information contained on the phone?
Yes. So Cellbrite itself will output a file, for lack of a better term, that we upload into what they call their physical analyzer, and we'll open all of the files that were extracted essentially so that they can be gone through by the end user.
Does that extraction report include like identifying information about the phone?
Yes.
The type, the phone model,
Yes.
and the manufacturer?
Yes.
What type of phone was this?
This was an iPhone 7.
And the information, or at least the user that was associated with the cell phone, was it identified in some way?
Yes.
What was it?
If I may refresh my memory here.
Please do.
It's listed as Kellen's iPhone.
Now, showing you Quartz Exhibit 136 for identification. Do you recognize that as being the summary and device information portion of the extraction report?
Yes, I do.
And does that contain the fact that this was a iPhone 7 with the name of Kellen's iPhone?
Yes, it does.
Moving forward to Quartz Exhibit 137 for identification, does this show a series of searched items, some of which have been deleted that were contained on the phone?
Yes, it does.
Does that include a search for different things, an address, for example?
Yes.
And that would be the first item, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then looking down at the bottom, the 15th item, does that have the name Kellen Winslow searched on Twitter?
Yes, it does.
And neither of those were deleted, is that right?
That's correct.
In terms of the items that were deleted, directing your attention to what's noted as number 14, was there an item that was searched in Safari?
Yes, there was.
Is Safari an internet application that is used by Apple devices?
Yes, it is.
And what was the item that was searched in number 14?
It says, how do men show their bulge?
In ter-
Objection, relevance.
Overruled. This item was deleted, you said?
Yes, it was.
Okay, next question.
Was there a searched item under that's labeled 13 in the Safari application?
Yes, there is.
And what was that?
Kellen Winslow Cycling?
And was that deleted as well?
Yes, it was.
Referring to searched item number 6, was there a Safari search, application search that was also deleted in that row?
Yes.
What was that?
Kellen Winslow Jr.?
And referring to search item number 7 on this extraction report, was there also another item that was deleted?
Yes, there was.
And what was that search in the Safari application?
Warrior tattoos.
In addition to the searched items that may be contained on an extraction report, did you also obtain text messages between the user of the phone that's identified as Kellen's iPhone and other parties?
Yes, I did.
Showing you Quartz Exhibit 139 for 138 for identification. Is this a series of text messages with an individual with a phone number beginning 858?
Yes, it is.
Can you see those okay?
I can approach, Your Honor.
Yeah, could you give her the actual hard copy of 138?
I will.
Thank you.
Is that easier for you to see?
Much better, thank you.
Okay.
Does that contain a series of text messages with that user with the prefix 858?
Yes, it does.
And is this an outgoing text message sent on June 7th, 2018 at 2:53 or 14:53 hours?
Yes, it is.
And in terms of the content of the text message, what was that first text message that was outgoing from the phone that you downloaded?
It says, Roman, what's up, bro? How have you been?
And was that sent on June 7th, 2018 and delivered to that phone number?
Yes.
What was the next text message sent by this phone, to the user of this phone, on June 7th at 2:53 p.m.?
It says, want to sell this home?
Was there a response that was received a minute later?
Yes. It says, K2, how are bro?
And was there a additional text sent at 4:51 p.m. or 16:51
Yes.
on June 7th?
Yes, there was.
And was that a incoming text to the device that you downloaded?
Yes, it was.
Was there a name associated with the phone number that sent this text?
Yes,
Is it listed in parentheses?
it is.
And what's that name?
Roman?
Does that come from the contact list from the device that was downloaded?
Yes, that's correct.
And what was the content of that further text message now later in the day on June 7th?
It says, K2, can you text me some pics of your truck with the VIN number and mileage?
Was there a additional text sent at 5:35?
Yes.
What was that?
It says, I would like to buy it to tow some jet skis.
Were there further texts regarding potential purchase of the Hummer?
Yes.
What were the additional texts?
Continue, it says, you only thinking about a Raptor? And then continues, K2, how soon do you want to sell the Hummer?
Were each of those sent on June 7th, 2018?
Yes.
As far as you know, based upon your knowledge of the investigation, was that the same date that Mr. Winslow had been contacted by law enforcement and a reference sample of DNA was obtained? Yes or no?
Yes.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 139 for identification on June 9th of 2018, was there a further text message from the contact Roman asking what's the miles?
Yes.
Was there a outgoing text message from Mr. Winslow that says new number?
Yes.
And were there attachments that were sent with photographs of a Hummer concurrently with that last text message?
Yes, there was.
And did the user Roman respond?
He did.
How did he respond?
He says, got it?
Did he respond further?
He says, you have the title, right? And there's additional.
Did he ask additional questions about
Yes.
the purchase?
Yes, he did.
What did he ask?
He says, what will you sell it for me? I'm sorry, what will you sell it to me for?
Did the user of Kellen's iPhone respond?
Yes.
How did he respond?
Says, yeah, got the title. Bought it for $40K 2 years ago with 80,000 miles on it. 30,000 with a question mark.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 140 for identification, was there further conversation regarding the sale of this Hummer H2?
Yes.
And was there an incoming text message to the device that was downloaded, received from the contact Roman?
Yes.
What did it say?
It says, let me see now. Does the truck need anything?
And were arrangements made to actually see the Hummer?
Yes.
What was discussed in the following text messages?
The next text says, can I come see it Monday a.m.? I'll bring a check with me.
And did he discuss a price?
Yes.
What was that?
It says, I think it's worth 20 to 25K off the top of my head, but I'll come see it and we can agree on a number. Is that okay?
And was there an outgoing text message to the contact Roman sent from Kellen's iPhone?
Yes.
And what was that?
It says, yeah, Monday is good, bro.
Did each of these texts, were they all sent on June 9th of 2018?
Yes.
And did they essentially discuss the price further?
Yes, they did.
So showing you Courts Exhibit 141, going forward on June 9th of 2018, was there a further incoming text message from the contact Roman?
Yes, there was.
And what did that say?
It says, okay, cool. Are you available between 11 and 12?
And was there a further question mark?
Yes.
And was there an outgoing response?
Yes.
And what was the date and time of that outgoing response?
On June 9th at 5:32 p.m.
And what was the response?
It says, that's perfect, bro.
Was there a further outgoing text message that was sent after that from Kellen's iPhone?
Yes, there was.
What was that?
It says, let me look to see what I'm liking.
And what was the response from the contact Roman?
It says, perfect. Text me the address. I'll come see you Monday.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 142 for identification. Now on June 10th of 2018, was there a further text message that was received from the contact Roman?
Yes.
What was that?
It says, K2, see you tomorrow. Is Hummer title at your house? Only thinking Raptor for your next car, or you still like Range Rovers?
And was there a outgoing text message from Kellen's iPhone?
Yes, there was.
What was that?
It says, yeah, we have the title, and I was thinking something like a Suburban or Tahoe.
And as it extends forward, would that contain the additional back and forth discussion regarding the sale and the title and the purchase price?
Yes.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 143 for identification, does that contain text messages that were sent and received with the contact Roman regarding the purchase of this Hummer?
Yes.
Now, looking at the third from the bottom on June 10th of 2018, at 6:22 p.m., was there a text message that was sent from the Kellen's iPhone that stated, "All right, thanks, see you tomorrow"?
Are you
Yeah.
talking about exhibit 143?
Yes.
I'm showing that as 22:11 p.m.
Pardon me, I referred to the date. So that would be 10/11, is that right?
Correct.
And is that where the user of Kellen's iPhone said, "All right, thanks, see you tomorrow"?
Yes.
And then extending further, did contact Roman respond?
Yes.
What did he say?
It says, "Anytime, bro. See you tomorrow, K2."
So now looking at June 11th of 2018 at 9:22 a.m., was there a text message that was sent from the contact Roman?
Yes.
And what did it say?
It says, "On my way to you now from Miramar."
Showing you Quartz Exhibit 144 for identification. Were there further communications between the contact Roman and the user of Kellen's iPhone that talked about their meeting that day?
Yes.
What did the contact Roman send?
The first one says about 20 minutes away.
And what was the response from the user of Kellen's iPhone?
It says, "Rom, I'm getting the car washed."
And did he ask regarding the time?
Yes, it continues to say, "Can you still do 11?"
And what was the response from the contact Roman?
It says, "I can meet you at the car wash, question mark. You really don't even need to wash it, K2. I'm not worried about that."
And what was the response from the user of Kellen's iPhone on June 11th at 9:27 a.m.?
It says, "Oh, okay, no, I was gonna have a mobile service do it."
And what was the further response from the user of Kellen's iPhone?
It says, "Okay, come through."
And what was the next text message from the contact Roman?
"No, don't worry, I'll see you shortly."
I'm showing you Quartz Exhibit 145 for identification, the last one as it relates to this text conversation. At 6:11, on June 11th, 2018 at 9:39 a.m., did the contact Roman send a text message to Kellen's iPhone?
Yes,
What did it say?
here at the gate.
Going forward then, on the same date, June 11th at 10:33 a.m., was there an additional incoming text message?
Yes.
And what did it state?
It said, "Nice seeing you, K2. I'll send you Tahoe pics today."
And was there a response from the user of Kellen's iPhone?
Yes.
What did it say?
"Good to see you too, bro. Thanks."
Now, in addition to the text messages that were recovered during the extraction of this iPhone, did you also receive a series of photographs that had been taken by the user of that iPhone?
Yes.
Gunnar, if I could object, we could have a sidebar on the record.
Okay. We'll meet at sidebar on the record. we're now meeting in the presence of the jury. All jurors are here, all counsel, the defendant are present. All right, Mr. Owens, you can continue your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. So then moving forward to Court's Exhibit 148 for identification. Now, we were just discussing the conversation regarding the negotiation and purchase of a Hummer H2, is that right?
Yes.
Looking at that exhibit before you on Court's Exhibit 148, does that show that there was a series of photographs that were taken of the black Hummer H2?
Yes.
What was the date that the first photograph was taken?
June 9th, 2018, approximately 3:23 in the afternoon.
And does this first exhibit show 7 total photographs? I can't count correctly today. 6 total photographs.
Yes, it does.
Showing you further Court's Exhibit 149, does it show a series of photographs also taken on the same date?
Yes.
And were those various locations on the Hummer H2?
Yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 150 for identification, does that continue to show a series of photographs taken on June 9th?
Yes, it does.
And do they all depict various locations within the Hummer H2?
Yes, it does.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 151, for identification, does that likewise show different locations within the Hummer H2?
Yes.
And were those taken on the same date of June 9th?
Yes, they were.
And showing you Court's Exhibit 152, were those additional photographs taken the interior portion of the Hummer H2?
Yes, they are.
And were they also taken on the same date of June 9th?
Yes, they were.
Now showing you Court's Exhibit 153 for identification, does that show the last of the series of photographs taken of the Hummer H2?
Yes.
And were they all taken on the same date?
Yes, they were.
Thank you, nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, Cross?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. McKinney.
Hi.
Can you hear me from here?
I can.
Thank you. You just testified to a series of text messages between Kellen's iPhone and a person identified as Roman.
Yes.
Are you aware that Roman is a licensed car dealer?
I was not.
Did you do any investigation into who Roman is?
I do not recall specifically. I do know there was some discussion with one of the detectives in the unit, but I think he did most of it on his own.
So another detective did the investigation into who Roman is.
Correct.
Do you know who that detective is?
Detective Sean Snow?
Snow?
Yes.
So these conversations, this text series between Kellen's iPhone and Roman began on June 7th. Is that right?
Let me just go back to the exhibit here. Yes, that's correct.
And the two individuals are talking about the sale of the Hummer on June 7th, June 7th.
Correct.
June 8th.
I do not have text messages on June 8th for that.
June 9th,
Yes.
June 10th,
Yes.
and June 11th.
Yes, that's correct.
And was there anything in that series of text messages that indicated any urgency to sell the Hummer?
Not that I saw.
Nothing further.
All right, anything further, Mr. Owens?
No, thank you.
All right, can this witness be excused?
She may.
All right. Any objection?
No.
All right, you are excused. Thank you very much. I'll take those exhibits. You're not leaving with any, are you?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Have a nice day. Next witness?
Thank you, Your Honor. The people call Michael Palermo.
All right.
testimony you are about to give in the matter now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you would, please have a seat at the witness stand. And if you would, please state your name and spell your first and last name for the record.
Mike Palermo, Mikepallermo.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
All right, direct examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Palermo.
Good afternoon.
What do you do for a living?
I am employed by the state of Arizona at Scottsdale Police Department Crime Laboratory. I'm a forensic scientist there in the DNA unit. I perform DNA analysis on bodily fluids and biological material, prepare reports on my findings, and testify in court as needed.
When is it that you started with the state of Arizona working with Scottsdale Police Department?
Back in November 2018.
Prior to relocating and beginning your work in Arizona, did you work in some capacity here in San Diego in the same area?
Yes, I worked as a criminalist for the San Diego Sheriff's Department Crime Laboratory for approximately 10.5 years, essentially performing the same functions that I described for Scottsdale.
Can you tell the jury just briefly about your educational experience that qualified you to become a forensic scientist?
I graduated from the University of California, San Diego with a biology degree in 2006. And from there, after my internship with the San Diego Police Department Crime Laboratory, I worked for Bodhi Technology as a private DNA testing company. And then after that, Los Angeles Police Department, San Diego Sheriff's, and now Scottsdale.
How many total years did you spend working in the San Diego Sheriff's Department Crime Lab?
Approximately 10 and a half.
And we've already heard from an analyst in this case, so I'm not going to cover a lot of the types of the subject matter that we may discuss normally. But in terms of your assignment and what you personally tested in this particular case, have you had an opportunity to review your reports and findings?
Yes, I did.
So regarding Sheriff's case ending 974, was information provided to you regarding the sexual assault of a woman who we're referring to as Jane Doe number 2?
Your Honor, may I refer to my report?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, that is correct.
And in terms of the analysis that you conducted with regard to Jane Doe number 2, were you given a reference sample that was identified as being from a person by the name of Kellen Winslow?
Yes.
And how is that item referred to in your report writing? By what number?
That is item 2.2.
I'm
sorry, 2.1.
And in terms of item 2.1, was that a reference sample that had been impounded by Detective John Johnson of the same case number and who made the actual request for analysis from you?
I'm unsure on who impounded that, but that's through our property and evidence unit is where I obtained that item.
Okay. And in terms of obtaining that item, did you conduct DNA analysis of the reference sample associated with Mr. Winslow?
Yes.
And were you able to develop a profile?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury the process by which you develop a profile from a reference sample?
Yes, so this sample, I believe this sample was a buccal swab or oral reference swab. And so it's just a large Q-tip, swab the inside of your mouth, your cheeks. And the first step in the DNA process is to break open those cells that house the DNA. So we add heat and chemicals to a cutting from that swab. And then we need to find out, that's the extraction step, then we need to find out how much DNA we have in the sample, so we quantitate it. After our quantitation step, we do PCR, or polymerase chain reaction. It's just a molecular xeroxing of the DNA, the types, the areas of the DNA that we're interested in. And then we'll use a genetic analyzer to help detect those DNA types. And I'll write a report on my findings.
And once you've generated a profile for the reference sample, is that then available for comparison to any items of evidence that may be analyzed by either you or any other criminalist within the crime lab?
Yes.
And are you aware that criminalist Kelly Hensley from the Sheriff's Department Crime Lab conducted a extensive amount of follow-up analysis?
Yes.
Now, did you in fact initially compare that profile to the sexual assault kit, or the SART kit, or rape kit, as some people refer to it, involving Jane Doe 2?
Yes, I did.
And the various items that had been collected from that SART kit, is that right?
Correct.
Now, did you likewise then conduct further analysis regarding swabs of potential DNA that were found within a Hummer H2?
Yes.
And were those swabs of DNA collected or impounded by Brandy Silverthorne from the San Diego Sheriff's Department in conjunction with Stephen Liu, criminalist from your crime lab?
Yes.
And in terms of the various items that were collected from the different locations within the Hummer H2, were those individually itemized under case number ending 974?
Yes, they were.
And were you able to compare those potential DNA swabs to the profile that you obtained from Mr. Winslow?
Yes.
And were you able to detect any DNA evidence that related to Mr. Winslow from those DNA swab kits?
Yes, that would refresh your recollection. Go ahead and do so and look up when you finish.
What item would you like me to discuss my results on?
So we can go one by one. Was there in fact a DNA swab kit from the front passenger door panel?
Yes.
And were you able to obtain any DNA that matched Mr. Winslow?
Yes. That was an apparent single source DNA profile that appeared consistent with DNA from Winslow.
Did you exclude as possible contributors either Jane Doe 1 or Jane Doe 2?
Yes. Both Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2 were excluded as possible contributors.
Did you then attempt to compare profiles that had been developed for Mr. Winslow, Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2 to the swab kit from the front passenger seat belt?
I was not able to make a comparison to that item. Due to the possible number of DNA contributors, no conclusions or comparisons could be made on that profile.
That was based upon the interpretation of the DNA mixture that you found, is that right?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury how a DNA mixture works and how it impacts your ability to draw any conclusions from it?
At the Sheriff's Crime Lab, anything over 4-person mixtures, they do not interpret. When you start dealing with mixtures of numerous individuals, the DNA results can get very complicated, and the Sheriff's Department currently doesn't have a method for that.
When you get to the point of having more than 4, is that right?
Correct.
Now, were there also DNA swab kits taken from the rear passenger side seat belt?
Correct.
In terms of Mr. Winslow and Jane Doe number 2, were those results inconclusive?
Yes.
And was Jane Doe 1 excluded from the rear passenger seat belt?
Yes.
Regarding the rear driver's side seat belt, was there a swab kit that was collected and submitted for analysis?
Yes, there was.
And was it inconclusive as it related to Mr. Winslow, Jane Doe 1, and Jane Doe 2?
Yes.
Was there a stain collection kit that had been taken from the rear middle seat area of the Hummer H2?
Yes.
How is a stain collection kit different from a DNA swab kit?
So this stain collection kit, I believe, was a swab. I don't have my case notes with me, but I believe it was a swab of a potential semen stain from the vehicle. And so that is just a similar process, a big Q-tip or a swab moistened with sterile water to swab up the portion of the stain.
Is it fair to say that when a vehicle is being forensically processed, they will, the criminalist and the forensic evidence technician will identify the areas of potential DNA as either a DNA swab kit or a stain collection kit, depending upon what's actually visibly seen?
Yes.
And is a stain collection kit something that would be suspected biological material?
Correct.
What process did you use in order to attempt to determine whether or not that stain collection kit actually contained semen? We're referring to item 9.1 from the rear middle seat.
Yes. So in this sample, a sperm search was done. When looking for a potential semen stain, we often start with a presumptive test, and that's just a simple color change test. So in the presence of chemicals, you'll get a color change reaction, which is a presumptive test. We'll then need to do a confirmatory test, and which involves searching for sperm cells. And in this sample, sperm cells were observed. So semen was detected on that stain, in that stain.
Once you had observed sperm cells within the stain kit that was collected from the rear middle seat portion of the Hummer, did you engage in the differential extraction process to analyze the potential DNA present?
Yes.
Can you just explain whether or not you were able to successfully isolate a sperm fraction from a non-sperm fraction?
Yes, I was.
Now, when you compared the first the sperm fraction from the stain kit, did you compare that to the reference sample from Mr. Winslow?
I did.
What conclusions did you draw?
The DNA profile obtained from that item matched the DNA profile from Kellen Winslow.
And did you compare that non-sperm fraction to the DNA reference sample from Mr. Winslow as well?
Yes, I did.
And what conclusions did you draw?
That was an apparent single source DNA profile, and it appears to be consistent with the DNA profile from Kellen Winslow.
Now, turning to item 9.2, was that a stain collection kit from the rear floorboard area of the Hummer H2?
Yes, it was.
Did you also follow the same process to determine whether or not there was semen present?
Yes.
And were you able to identify intact sperm cells?
Yes.
Did you engage in the differential extraction process?
Yes.
And what conclusions did you draw from the comparison of the sperm fraction to the reference sample of Mr. Winslow?
The DNA profile obtained from that item matched Mr. Winslow.
Did you also compare that to the non-sperm fraction from the stain collection kit on the rear floorboard?
Yes.
And what conclusions did you draw?
The DNA profile obtained from that item matched the DNA profile obtained from Kellen Winslow as well.
Is it fair to say that based upon your analysis of the swabs that were collected during the initial processing of the vehicle excluded either Jane Doe 1 or Jane Doe 2 from being present? Or were rendered inconclusive?
Jane Doe 1 was excluded as a possible contributor.
And were there some various areas of inconclusive results as it related to Jane Doe 2?
As far as the item 9.1, the stain collection kit from the rear middle seat, Jane Doe 2 was excluded. Jane Doe 2 was excluded from the non-sperm fraction of the stain from the rear middle seat. The sperm fraction stain from the rear floorboard, Jane Doe 2 was also excluded. And the non-sperm fraction from that area, the rear floorboard, Jane Doe number 2 was excluded.
And we've discussed the areas or the items where there were inconclusive results, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take our afternoon recess. We're going to be in recess for 20 minutes. I'll ask counsel to stick around. I have another issue to talk to them about briefly, so we'll see you back here in 20 minutes. Please remember the admonition, 20 minutes. All right, the record reflect that the jurors have left the courtroom. I just wanted to, I know we've talked about it informally off the record about scheduling for tomorrow. Before lunch, we just met briefly in chambers off the record and discussed the possibility of having Jane Doe number 1's daughter come in tomorrow morning and for a hearing to determine what exactly she's going to say. Is that because there's no preliminary My understanding is, Mr. Owens, you want to bring her in to establish
order. Court is now in session.
All right, we are back on the record. The record reflects the presence of all jurors, all counsel. The defendant is present. I want to apologize for the delay. We have had a number of issues come up that we've had to deal with outside your presence. It took a lot longer than we thought they would. So again, I apologize for keeping you waiting. All right, you finished direct?
I have, Your Honor.
All right, who's handling cross?
I am.
All right, Mr. Carlos, cross-examination.
Thank you. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. Doing well, thank you.
Big question is why you're in Arizona instead of San Diego.
Numerous
You have to
reasons.
So let me get this right. You essentially are you analyze the DNA that's found in something that's provided to you, correct?
Correct.
You're given a reference sample, reference swab, which you then attribute to a known contributor, correct?
Yes.
In this case, it would have been Mr. Winslow.
Yes.
And you're also given profiles for Jane Doe's 1 and 2, correct?
Correct.
And I guess your tone, you are told that those are for Jane Doe's 1 and 2, right?
Correct.
I mean, you didn't see them actually pulled from these individuals, right?
Correct.
These swabs are taken, and then there's a chain of custody, and everybody makes sure that it's done the right way, and then it finally gets to you.
Yes.
Right? So what you did was analyze those samples that were found inside the vehicle.
Yes.
So correct me if I'm wrong, basically Kellen Winslow's DNA was inside his own vehicle,
Correct.
and Jane Doe 1 and 2, let's start with Jane Doe 1. There's no DNA from Jane Doe 1,
Correct. Jane Doe 1 was excluded.
and no DNA from Jane Doe 2.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, anything further?
No.
All right, can this witness be excused?
You may.
Mr. Carlos?
Yes, sir.
Can this witness be excused?
Yes.
'Cause I have a feeling he's going back to Arizona tonight, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right, then you are excused. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people now recall Kelly Henson.
All right, do you have any grab the exhibits? No. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
If I
Good
could
afternoon,
ask,
miss. You can come on. You've already been sworn, so we don't need to do it twice. Good afternoon,
Hi.
and welcome back. So as I said, I will remind you, you are still under oath from when you were here last week.
Yes,
All
okay,
right.
yeah.
All right, direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Hensley,
Hi.
good afternoon. Can you tell us everything about your training experience that you told us last time? I'm just kidding. So here's what I want to talk to you about. Did you conduct some further analysis based upon some of the initial work that was done by Mike Palermo, a fellow criminalist in the San Diego Sheriff's Department?
Yes, I did.
You talked about it in your initial testimony, but were there revisions to the interpretation guidelines that the San Diego Sheriff's Department adopted in interpreting mixture results that have been promulgated by SWIGDAM?
Yes, they were recommendations to how we report our conclusions.
So you were recommended by who?
SWIGDAM is SWGDAN.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted you to spell it for the court reporter.
Thank
All right,
you.
go ahead.
Ms. Hensley, can you explain to the jury what happened between the summer of 2018 and then in February of 2019 in terms of the interpretation guidelines that the Sheriff's Crime Lab adopted?
Sure. So SWIGDAM is the scientific working group on DNA analysis methods, and they formed a smaller group of people who are forensic scientists in the community, as well as population statistics and genetic people in the community as applies to forensic science. And what their goal was to try and create cohesiveness throughout the country by issuing these recommendations for laboratories to follow. The main thing that they did was recommend that laboratories not use an inconclusive range for our verbal scale. To go into the verbal scale a little bit, when statistics are calculated, we have to apply a verbal qualifier to the number that's given as the statistic.
Ms. Henslin, let me stop you right
Okay.
there. And I'm gonna ask as best you can, I know that you're providing a lot of technical information, and the court reporter has to take down each word that you're saying as you say it. So as best you can, try to slow down, okay? So we talked about it in your direct examination originally when you came to testify last week, but in terms of how you express the conclusions from the actual analysis that's done, is there something such as a verbal scale?
Yes.
Is there also something that's referred to as the stochastic threshold? And that's spelled Stochastic.
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain, in terms of DNA mixtures, how it is that you're able to arrive at results of more than one contributor when there's more than one DNA profile present? And then how that then correlates to the verbal scale?
When I have a complex DNA mixture, that can be a mixture of 3 or 4 individuals. The laboratory doesn't interpret mixtures of 5 or more individuals. Low-level data or data that's below our stochastic threshold, that's a number that's designated by the lab at which that we may be missing information. When we have a lot of people and there's information that may be below our stochastic threshold, then it's hard for us to determine who may definitely or definitely not be in a mixture. So that's where the verbal scale comes in to help us give a verbal qualifier or an explanation to what some of these numbers mean.
So when there are multiple contributors to a mixture, for example, when there is a DNA swab of a body part of a person, whether it may be fingernail scrapings or a swabbing of someone's neck or other part of their body, is it oftentimes seen that there are multiple contributors to that type of a swab?
It is possible.
And in terms of the interpretation of whether or not a particular DNA profile is present as a contributor to the mixture, is that where the stochastic threshold is implicated to determine whether or not you'll have any conclusive results?
It can. If there is a lot of information below the stochastic threshold, it may be difficult to create or to make a conclusion on a sample.
So then how would you explain the changes in the verbal scale that were adopted by the crime lab for DNA mixtures?
Previously to these SWGDM recommendations, we at the Sheriff's Department had an inconclusive zone. The inconclusive zone was available for us when we had a lot of missing information, low-level data, or something that may make it ambiguous whether an individual may be included in a mixture or not. SWGDM's recommendations were that the laboratories do not use an inconclusive zone. They want us to be able to present what our numbers mean as accurately as possible and not have an inconclusive zone that doesn't really mean anything to the people we're explaining our information to.
Is it basically an attempt to arrive at a more precise way of expressing the data that's reflected in the analysis?
Yes.
And when those guidelines were adopted by the San Diego Sheriff's Crime Lab, were they also widely adopted by different accredited labs throughout the country?
Yes.
Now, did you conduct a technical review of all of the analysis that criminalist Palermo had done when he was with the Sheriff's Department Crime Laboratory?
Yes, I did.
Can you explain to the jury what a technical review entails?
I looked at his entire case packet and reports, reviewed all of his data and his notes that were taken during his analysis to make sure everything was per protocol and as expected as it should be in terms of how we do things in the laboratory.
Did you during the course of that technical review process, did you look at the previous comparison involving the right neck swab that had been collected from Jane Doe 2 during the sexual assault examination? The item number being 1.3.07.
Yes, I did.
And did you in fact arrive at a verbal scale conclusion of limited support for inclusion of the reference sample for Kellen Winslow?
Yes, I did.
Were there, let me ask you in terms of the quantity of DNA when we're talking about the limited support for inclusion, how would you describe that in this particular swab, on the right neck swab?
Can you repeat the question, please? I'm sorry.
The quantity of DNA on the right neck swab when you have limited support for inclusion, can you explain how it was that that was broken down between the potential contributors?
Sorry, let me find my correct report for somebody.
I have a copy of it. Do you have it?
I found it, yeah. For the right neck swab, the estimated mixture ratio is 97 to 1 to 1 to 1.
And based upon the mixture that was obtained, did it appear as though there may be as many as 4 contributors?
There were 4 assumed contributors to this mixture.
And in terms of the ratio of the 97 portion, was that attributed to Jane Doe number 2 herself?
Yes, it was.
That matched her DNA profile, is that right? Or it was consistent with her DNA profile?
I assumed her because the DNA profile I obtained, it made sense to me that she was in that mixture because it was collected from her body.
So in terms of the additional potential 3 contributors, is that fair to say that Kellen Winslow's reference sample came back as a possible 1% inclusion?
He best fit as a 1% contributor, yes.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross?
So I just want to be clear, so on the multiple contributors, you said there were 3 of them?
Which item?
On 1307, the right next one.
The right neck swabs, there is assumed number of contributors of 4.
4, you had said it's a little slower on that.
Assumed number of contributors of 4 people.
Okay, does that include the Jane Doe 4, Jane Doe 2?
Yes,
So 3 others?
3 others, correct.
And did you do a statistical analysis as to the other contributors, as to what, percentage they might have?
We only do a statistic when we have a known contributor to compare it to.
So in other words, if you had a reference sample for the other 2 unknowns, then it could be higher, you don't know.
No, they would still be possible contributors of 1% contributors as well.
So it's just like 1% just covers everybody?
There are 4 people assumed. Jane Doe 2 is 1 contributor at 97%. Then I have limited support for inclusion for Kellen Winslow as one of the other 1% contributors. So that's 98% total of the mixture. There's another 1% contributor and a 4th 1% contributor, which then would make 100% of the mixture.
Right. And so you have no way of dating any of this? In other words, when the sample was taken?
Oh, no.
Or how long it might have lasted on some time?
No.
Or where it came from, for that matter?
Correct.
Do you know what it was? Was it saliva, blood, anything? You have none?
Yep.
So you also then, you were given a number of things to test, right?
I was.
Can you tell us, what other things were you given to test?
Objection vague as to the other things.
Overruled, you can allow clarification.
I'll clarify my things. What items of evidence were you given to test?
The items of evidence that I actually tested were items collected from a Hummer.
And can you refer to those by the numbers in your report?
Sure.
And time, please.
Item 15.1 is a DNA swab kit from the front passenger seat of the Hummer. And 15.2 is cut fabric and padding from the front passenger seat of H2.
Stop right there. Were those two, were any of Jane Doe 1 or Jane Doe 2's DNA?
No,
Okay. Continue.
those are the only two items I have.
Those are the other two items you had?
That I tested personally, yes.
How about review? Were you able to review other findings?
Yeah, I reviewed all of Mike's work.
Is that your job to review your other coworkers' work?
I had to reissue his reports per the SWGDAN changes, so part of that did require me to review his work.
Okay. One moment, you know.
All right.
So, were you asked to review 1.305, right-hand fingernail scrapings?
Yes,
That would be from Jane Doe 2.
correct.
And did you find Kellen Winslow excluded?
Sorry, I didn't hear
Was
you.
Kellen Winslow excluded?
1.3.05?
Yes.
Sorry, just a moment. Let me find my right one again. Yes, he's excluded.
1.307, we just, the right next round, we didn't do that, right?
We did that, yes.
You testified to that?
Yes,
Right, and there's Kellen Winslow was the limited support, that's the 1%.
correct.
And item 1.6 AS,
Yes,
that would be the staying outside left leg.
it is.
That, if Kellen Winslow was excluded,
I could not make any conclusion regarding Kellen Winslow in that sample.
very good.
All right, anything further?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, can this witness be excused or subject to recall?
She may be excused.
All right, Ms. Carlos?
Two weeks.
All right. Excused?
Yes.
All right, you are excused, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Next witness.
Your Honor, I think based on the court's rulings and the next witness that the people would call, we could begin at 9 a.m., if that's okay.
Okay. All right, I guess we're gonna break early today then, and we have been, that's one of the things we've been discussing is the order of witnesses and so forth, so we are gonna go ahead and break early for today. We're gonna be back at it tomorrow morning right at 9 o'clock. Please remember the admonition, don't discuss the case with anybody or form or express any opinions. We'll see you back here at 9 o'clock in the morning. Have a nice night. And counsel.